Hello, everybody. Welcome to the technical analysis webinar here with AvaTrade. My name is Troy. I'll be presenting. As always, keep in mind that there's risk involved with each trade that you take. No one trade is guaranteed to profit, so you want to manage risk in a way that makes sense for you. And we'll go over some ideas in that regard with some useful tools in our order window in the web trader and app that really assist you with your risk management side of things. And also keep in mind that what we cover is not meant to be financial advisement, but is coming from an educational perspective. Now, from our main website, we can log into the web trader, which allows you to trade on both the MT4 and MT5 accounts, but with the advanced functionality that our web trader offers. And what you see in the web trader, you'll find the same functionalities in our app, and you can download the app from the major app stores. Now, if you log in here, then you're in the web trader, and as you're getting into your technical analysis, it always makes sense to also think about what's happening fundamentally as well. And we know that there was some economic data that came out of the U.S. that showed economic or consumer sentiment was higher than expected, and so still the U.S. economy shows signs that it's strong enough that perhaps it puts enough fear in the markets that the feds in the U.S. still are going to have trouble finding reason to lower interest rates yet. It's been kind of an ongoing theme out of the U.S. Each time the FOMC committee members speak, and there's one who spoke earlier today, there's one who's speaking right now, and when they talk a lot about looking for cues or signs in the economic data out of the U.S. That things are slowing down enough that they believe inflation will be low enough that they can start to ease some of the high interest rates that they ramped up over the past year plus. And so really over the last 6 months, it's even been on pause. But last year they increased the interest rate coming into the end of last year, I think 10 times in 10 or 11 meetings in a row for the FOMC committee, and so all of that was done to try and bring down inflation, which it has done quite a bit in the U.S. and the same sort of things have been done globally in other countries as well. But they're looking for signs that inflation is lower than it is. And that things have slowed down enough from those high interest rates that it would be warranted to lower interest rates back down, to start lowering them. And they just haven't gotten to that point, because just when they think, hey, the jobs numbers look bad, maybe things are slowing down to where we can lower interest rates, then they get an inflation report that's higher than expected. Or today it was consumer sentiment higher than expected. And something like consumer sentiment means, well, then maybe there's still consumer demand out there, and that's what keeps prices up. And so inflation has a hard time coming down when there's a lot of buying intensity out there from consumers and businesses, etc. So it looks like interest rates probably won't come down right away in the U.S., but we'll see. But that's out there right now today, a bit of fear. Volatility index has been up a bit in the U.S., partially because of that. Coming out of the holiday weekend for the U.K. and for the U.S., it's been a bit of choppy trading today, I think we could call it. There hasn't been anything that's really driven the market hard in one direction to break much of any support or resistance levels on the larger size candles, okay? Yeah, 5-minute, 15-minute, 1-hour candles, there have been some broken support or resistance levels, important price levels, but as you go to the 4-hour candles, the 1-day candles, those prices have held. And we'll take a look within the signals that are coming out today as we look at the technical analysis and also maybe with a bit of our own technical analysis as well. So what we could do is take a look at something pretty standard for traders, a major indice maybe, or a major index, I should say, one of the major indices. And so maybe the US 500, we could look at the FTSE. It doesn't have to be just US focused, even though right now it's the US trading hours have really kicked into gear. If we expand the chart, we can start to take a look at maybe 1 hour, 2 hour candles. And what I see is, if we want to draw some lines, a bit of support down here. Okay, and it looks like it's going to try and challenge a support level down lower right now. There's a bit of momentum, makes sense. Like I said, there's a little bit of fear out there about that consumer sentiment that came in higher than expected. And right now there's an FOMC member speaking. And so that's got the volatility going. It looks like the US 500 is trying to push down maybe to a support level down here. And by the way, what we could do is bring up the signal on the US 500 and see what the expectation is. It was a buy signal, but we see you have to always pay attention to the technical analysis combined with the fundamental news to really get the bigger picture. So while this was uptrending, it looked like this pivot line was going to hold and that this buy signal was a solid signal. And then came the FOMC member speaking, right? And so we see it's really starting to push down towards this pivot line. The way these signals work, if the movement breaks to the underside of the pivot line, then it becomes the sell scenario in this signal, which means it tells you if the price moves below 53.15, then look for further downside towards 53.03 to 52.87, which are these lines down here, okay? If it breaks the pivot, okay? So one thing you can do, let's draw a line at that 53.15 then, which is the pivot line. And I drew it pretty close to that, 53.13 almost I was on. So 53.15, this matches up with the support level that we just drew before we looked at the signal, okay, within one or two numbers. And so this is old support. As long as this bounces off of here, the buy signal is still valid. So if you were going to go with this buy signal right now, take advantage of the dip that just happened with the FOMC member speaking, okay, then you'd probably want your stop loss just below the pivot, below this low point from earlier today. And we see, and actually, we could even try to go below this low point from last week. This is from Friday, but somewhere in this range, you might get your stop loss right down here, okay? Because if it's truly a downtrend, then it probably would break today's low and Friday's dip right here with this wick. So somewhere in this area, there's an area of support, and that pivot line is this first line up here. So if it gets down below there, you could have a pending order to sell. Okay, you also could have your stop loss down there for any buy move. So this is a buy signal. You understand the fundamentals of why this might have been pushing down right now. It's key to understand what's happening fundamentally, that someone's speaking that's causing some volatility, but that the support level held and it looks like it's trying to bounce. So in that case, you might say, okay, then I'll go ahead and buy on this. I'll put my stop loss at the resistance level up here. That's up where the signal had its take profit, by the way, up where you find resistance from earlier in the day today. Don't even have to break today's high to hit my take profit. So take profit at 53.37 or 53.38. That was there by default. Okay, 53.37. My stop loss at 53.10 to be below the pivot line. Could go a little lower if you wanted to be below that next wick. Okay, so equal risk and reward right now, about. It's moving up as we speak, so now it's back to being even. 2025, 2025. So equal risk and potential profit with the stop loss and take profit that I set up. Now I just need to adjust my trade size, because maybe I don't want to risk 2000 or 2025. Maybe I want to risk 1% of my balance, which would be 650. Maybe I want to risk more than that, less than that. So you should know the number that you want to risk per trade. And now I just need to adjust my trade size to fit that number. So if I did 0.6 on my lot size, now I'm risking 855. Okay, 0.5. Now I'm risking 700, getting closer to my 1% number. Okay, and this is changing by the second because I'm on the live market. So this is moving as I'm lining up the trade. And so I'm risking about 600 to make about 600. Okay, so I can go ahead and buy on that. So now I know my stop loss is down below the pivot from the signal that we just looked at. I confirmed with my own technical analysis where I might want my stop loss as well. Looking at the price levels even from last week, this also seemed to be an area of support from last week. And then again today here or yesterday. And then we see the support down here, okay? Even though the US markets were closed, some of these instruments were moving yesterday. And so now we see it trying to bounce towards our take profit, which we conveniently put right up here before this resistance. So the resistance is just a little higher. Our take profit is just below that resistance, okay? And so if you want to check out the trade as it's running, you can come over here. You can see if it's overcome the small spread that was there, it's trying to load the current value. And then what's nice about looking at the chart from this section, from where your open trades are running, we see we've moved into profit already because we were bouncing off that support level as we got started. Now, it's just getting going, so it's bouncing profit, in and out of profit. We'll see how that goes. Now, once this chart loads, what we're going to see is that we can adjust our stop loss and take profit based on the lines that we drew for stop loss and take profit, based on the prices that we put. And so let me just maybe move out of this section and come back to see if it's going to load for us properly. Sometimes the internet in the office where I'm working, the Wi-Fi sometimes, if I'm not plugged in with the hard wire, can be a little temperamental. Okay, we'll check back on this chart loading in a moment if it won't load here. And let's go ahead and look at another instrument. And so there was a request for the US dollar index. And so we could pull that up. Here, let's do this. Here's the dollar index, and we have a signal on it. And so there was a sell signal on the dollar index, which already hit the support level or the take profit level. So we see it was a sell, and it says that the market already reached the key level. The US dollar had come down, and it looks like it's trying to find a way to strengthen as it's coming up off of that first take profit level. And so we see a bit of a bounce on the dollar index. And, you know, the question is, will it work its way back up to the pivot line potentially? You know, they're not looking to raise interest rates in the US, but I think probably there's more certainty today that they're not going to lower the interest rates anytime real soon, like next week or next month, because of some of the data that came out. And so you could potentially see the US dollar try to retrace the drop that it had today and this week, and maybe try and push the strength of the US dollar index back up towards this pivot line, which is a level of resistance. Okay, so you could be looking at 104.60 as a potential take profit. If it reverses the successful sell signal, it could work its way back up towards 104.60. And if we expand the chart, you'd be looking up here. Okay, and it makes sense. Why is that the pivot line in the signal? Look exactly here. That's this 104.60. You see that's an old support level that started last week. Okay, support, 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 support. Then once it broke below, it became resistance and went down. And so if this is going to come up, it might have trouble breaking this spot right here, which is why this is a pivot line in the signal. If it breaks above that, then there must be a lot of momentum is the assumption, and then they look for further upside towards 104.75 and 104.89. But currently, because it already dropped to this take profit level, you could, if you're looking to buy on this, you could actually make a profit without ever having to break above the pivot, okay? Without having to break this resistance level. So if you were buying, maybe stop loss below this low today and take profit at this resistance up here, which looks like it's trying to climb as we're speaking. You know, if you wanted to sell on this, you might be patient and see if it reaches the pivot and then have a pending order to sell from this spot as well. Okay, those are some ideas with the dollar index. I just wanted to double check that everything's okay with the connections because of that chart not loading properly. So if you would, type okay if you're still hearing me properly and seeing my screen all right. All right, great. Thank you, Yulia, and others. So we're up and running fine. Just for some reason, my US 500 chart in this location doesn't want to load. Okay, that's interesting. But the other charts are loading fine. If we open another trade example, I'll show you that from this open trade area, you'll see the stop loss and take profit lines, and you can slide them on the chart to adjust those settings rather than having to type them, which you can type them as well, but you have that option. All right, so maybe we look at another signal. We could look at something like gold and see what the technical signal is. And not everything has a signal. Like if we wanted copper, there's no signal on that right now. The gold futures contract doesn't have a signal, but the spot gold price does. And so if we click on there, we'll see that it's a buy signal. But currently, you see the US dollar is trying to strengthen, okay? And you can understand why when you pay attention to the fundamentals like we said before. Why is the USD all of a sudden strengthening? Well, because about 15 minutes ago, 18 minutes ago, an FOMC member started talking about monetary policy a bit. I don't know what they're saying, but I can guess what they're saying, that they don't anticipate lowering interest rates until, you know, there are more economic signs of a slowdown in the US. And so that type of talk strengthens the US dollar, okay? In general, lowering interest rates would weaken a currency. So talk about not lowering them tends to cause a reaction where people want to buy that currency then because they think, okay, it'll be stronger if they're not going to lower the interest rates. And so the question is, does it break the support level? Or is this just an opportunistic entry point to buy on this buy signal from? Okay, you don't have to go with the initial signal if you think it might break this support level. You can do a pending order below the support, below the pivot line, and go with the sell scenario because maybe the fundamental news changed from the time this buy signal came out. And we can see it almost reached the first take profit. You see it climbed up all the way to here, okay? We're down here now, maybe challenging this pivot line. Now it's not broken it, but it's looking to challenge it, and that's at 23.50. So let's draw a line on the chart. Let's do our own technical analysis here. So 23.50 is here, okay? And if you wonder, well, why did they put the pivot line here? If it breaks below this line, why do they think then it'll drop further? And if you follow this line over, look at the support level from earlier today and from earlier in the week. We see support, 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 support. Once it broke below that price, look at the plunge, okay? Once it broke below 23.50, we see gold go flying down. Then it worked its way back up, and once it went above this price again, it broke and carried up with momentum. Then once it challenged this price, it bounced back up again here. Tried to break below 23.50 and bounced right back up. And now here it comes back towards 23.50 again. So this price level for shorter term trading looks to be kind of important, okay? We see it acting as resistance here. And once it broke through, acting as support. And once it broke through, acting as resistance again. And once it broke back above, acting as support again. Okay? So you can do two things with this. And you can do them at the same time, even. You can buy with the buy signal because it's still a valid buy signal, and it's still above the pivot line. And you can understand that this might be a temporary strengthening of the US dollar because there's an FOMC member talking. But really, he's not saying anything that people didn't already know, most likely. So it could be an overreaction, pulling gold down to a better spot to buy from if you wanted to go with this buy signal. Okay? And if that's how you read it, then here we go. We say take profit. You don't even have to break today's high. Okay? 23.63 would be below today's high. Okay? Stop loss below the pivot line, so 23.49. All right, so potential profit 3,400 plus, potential loss 2,100 plus, 2,200. Okay, so it's an opportunistic entry point in the direction of the signal with the support level holding so far. Okay, now I just need to adjust my trade size because maybe I don't want to risk that much. So now that I have my entry points and exit points determined based on the technical analysis and the signal, now I adjust my trade size to be the amount of risk that I want. Here I am around 1% of my balance, a little less, and maybe I'm comfortable with that. Okay, so now my trade is off in the direction of the signal in this case. Didn't have to be, but it is. Because I think the fundamentals maybe support that as well. The market's been ranging a bit today, like I said, not breaking big price levels in either direction too much. And so maybe this runs right back up from this support level now without breaking it and hits our take profit towards the next resistance level, which is what the signal was predicting anyways. Now, if I thought there was an announcement that was such a big deal that wow, I think the USD could be rapidly strengthening, then I probably wouldn't go with this signal. I wouldn't say, okay, it's a buy signal, it looks good. I would probably say the fundamentals don't go with that signal. But currently, the fundamentals are kind of neutral. They're not really going against that signal. And if there is economic fear out there, that tends to help strengthen a safe haven like gold anyways. Okay? So what's the other option with this trade? Remember, if it breaks below the pivot line, it's a sell signal. So I could put a pending order that if it breaks down to say 23.48, 23.49, it hits our stop loss at 23.49 on that buy. If it goes to 23, say 48.50, maybe I sell. Okay, I could say execute when price hits. Hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully the buy just goes up and wins. But if it breaks to the other side of the pivot, the signal from Trading Central says it's a sell then. And you might look to take profit down lower. And here's the support level down lower, right about here. Okay, so take profit could be 23.40 and a half. Okay, that's based on the technicals here, 2340.69, 2340 and a half. Stop loss would be if it breaks this pivot level and drops and hits our entry price, then my stop loss would make sense to be back above that broken support, because if it's a true breakthrough and it's going to surge down like this one did here, it never looked back. It never went back above. So if it does this again, I only need my stop loss up above that support if it repeats that. So at 23.50 and a half, something like that. 23.51 even. Okay, so whoops, I switched the execute when price hits price. 23.48 and a half. Let's put that back. That's our entry price, and our take profit's 23.40. Our stop loss is 23.50 and a half, and so stop loss 23.50 and a half. It's already in there. Okay, so my potential profit is like exactly four times my risk. Okay, 3,200 to 800 possible profit to possible loss if the sell signal triggers. Okay, And again, we hope that it doesn't, right? Because that means the buy signal wins, okay? So execute if the price hits 23.48, take profit at 23.40, stop loss up at 23.50 and a half, back above what would be the broken pivot line. And so we're ready to let that be set up as a pending order. Okay, so that's under the orders. Okay, trigger price is if it breaks below that pivot level in the signal. The open positions are here, and hey, our chart is loading. That's amazing. So again, it's not our platform. It's my Wi-Fi. Unfortunately, sometimes plays games with me. So lesson be learned. Always have a strong internet signal when you're trading. So this is what I wanted to show you. This is our buy trade on the gold, and we can see our take profit here. And if I decide, you know what, maybe I want my take profit at this resistance level instead of this one up here. I look at the candles and I say, you know what, maybe I want it here. Okay, no problem. I just adjusted my take profit without having to type it manually. Okay, it shows take profit with a check mark. It reset my take profit just like that. And I'm doing it based on the technical analysis. I don't have to go away from the chart to adjust this. And my stop loss, I could do the same thing. I could decide, you know what, I think my stop loss should be a little lower, below both of these wicks here. So I just slid my stop loss down based on this technical analysis here. I adjusted my stop loss a bit. Okay, so I'm risking a little bit more, accepting maybe a little less profit by sliding my take profit down a little. That's no problem. You can do that at any time. Okay, so these are adjustable very easily. And where's the other place you can do that? If you don't want to slide it on the chart, you can click on the little I here, or I'm sorry, on the pencil, and you can manually type your take profit and stop loss as well. Okay, you could type them in just as easily and click update. Okay, so you could change those settings here anytime you might wish. Any questions, comments at this point? I'll keep an eye as I go along. I think we should take a look at least one more instrument before we call it quits here in the session. And maybe we look at a currency pairing. And this also has a signal. We see the pound expected to go up against the USD. So pretty much all of these signals have been going with the USD to be weaker, okay? And with the FOMC talk, started 30 minutes ago. I don't think anything new is going to be said at this point that we don't already know in terms of policy from that speaker. And so we can see the support level held, but we got a better entry point if you wanted to follow this signal, okay? Maybe the pivot level breaks, so you want to risk manage, but you could get your stop loss below this 127.55 and be in line with this signal if you wanted to test it out. So 127.55 is down here. Okay, this was an old resistance level on the 1 hour candles. You can see resistance, 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 and then it breaks through and goes up to a new price level. Okay. And so that's why this is the pivot line. So if you were going to buy on this, you might put your stop loss below the pivot line somewhere down here, and your take profit, if we expand the chart, perhaps somewhere up a bit higher. And let me go to 2 hour candles, 4 hour candles, and we start to see that this wick went up quite a ways, okay, today. And so that's up around 127.98 without having to break today's high. Okay, so if you were going to follow this signal, take profit could be 127.98. Stop loss could be down below the pivot level Remember, the pivot was here at 127.55. This is an old line. Get rid of that one. This was the pivot level, 127.55. And here's where you could maybe put a stop loss just below that, 127.50, something like that. So 5 pips below the pivot, approximately. And you see the potential profit is better than the possible loss. So, with this type of setup, it could be deemed opportunistic because it's in the direction of the signal. And if you were wanting to follow that signal, the pullback that we had in the last 4 hours, okay, gives you a better entry price to be able to follow that signal. Okay, if you think that this could go down and break the support, you don't have to follow the original signal. You can put a pending order at this spot below the pivot line. And if it breaks below the pivot, you could have a pending order to sell with a confirmed downtrend from that point. Then with your take profits down at the next support levels down in that sell signal. Okay. And I'll go ahead and set this trade at an appropriate trade size for the risk level I might want. And at 2 3/4 lots, that gives me almost 600 risk, 2.9, and I'm around 1% risk. I think we'll do 3 even lots to get just above 600, which is around 1% risk on my demonstration account balance here. And so there it goes. Okay. I think this is a good place to stop. I just wanted to give some examples of how to use our technical signals and your own technical analysis, drawing price levels maybe with support and resistance to show where you think the key price levels are and to see if they match the signal's key price levels, which they did almost exact today with our own eye for drawing support and resistance, and then where those pivot lines and take profit lines were from the signal, they matched up almost exactly with our own lines that we drew with our technical analysis. Then the key is just picking the direction that you think makes sense based on the fundamentals. And since the USD is trying to strengthen right now, some of those secondary signals might make the most sense. Being below the pivot in this case with a pending order, in case this goes ahead and breaks the pivot line, then you get in the direction of the current momentum. Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining. Good luck with your trading the rest of the week. And I'll have my next session on Thursday afternoon. All right, everybody. Till then, good luck with the trading. Bye for now.